This is
the
Bhangra podcast.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Bhangra podcast. On this episode, we've got myself, Naina, and Umar and Ram are also here. You guys want to say hi quickly?
Hi.
What's up, it's Umar.
And we have a guest with us today. Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself quickly and say who you are, what you do, and what you're doing here?
My name is David Castro. I am an educator in the street dance community. Been popping for 21 years now, and people bring issues to me that the scene needs to be resolved, and I get it done. Essentially, it's my job.
For people who are listening who may know, may not know, one of the reasons that you are here is because of an Instagram video that you made that got a lot of attention and touches on a topic and a dance movement that a lot of us are super familiar with. Can you give us I know a lot of things have happened since you initially made that video, but can you give us the TLDR on the video you made and why you made it?
All right, so the video was to call out Tanish Joshi and make sure I'm saying his name right, Tanish Joshi, right? And
I think it's Tanish Joshi, but yeah, that is the dancer.
Yeah, and BFunk, just so I could have my ducks in a row, because the moment I saw it, when I looked at his face, I was like, I've never seen you before, and there's no way that you're teaching at this level, and I don't know who you are. When I looked at BFunk, it said they were in California, and I was like, yeah, there's no way that I don't know who you are. So I got all my ducks in a row, and I went live to essentially discuss everything that was wrong, all the terminology that was wrong, why it was totally wrong, how many different examples I could give to show what this equals out to and how it affects the Black and Brown community, how it's disrespectful to the Black and Brown community, how it's disrespectful to living legitimate members of Black and Brown history, and how it's disrespectful to the people passing on those teachings. You know, street dance is a legitimate culture. It's not just this ignorant hood pastime that society sees as unorganized and doesn't have any value. Because street dance culture has effectively changed the face of entertainment for the entire United States. The culture in the United States is Black culture. So when I'm looking at this, especially because he's a brown young man, it hurt me as a Black and brown person. It was kind of just like, bro, you know, it feels worse when it's your own people, because it's like, as a man of color, how do you expect white people to respect our stuff if we don't respect our stuff? It hurts more when it's your own people, that you expect it from people that's not you. Just like how the Western world has abused yoga. Lord have mercy, right? So we expect that to happen from white folks. You know what I'm saying? We don't expect it from people of color. So when it happens, it's kind of just like, man, what the hell? Like, what am I supposed to do with this? So I gave him a tongue lashing, and not so many nice words, but I wasn't totally disrespectful to him. It was really kind of like the tone was more disappointment, because I could see that he was a person who had followers. But then when I found out later on was that it wasn't all what it seemed, at least on his end.
Just so everyone kind of knows, I guess everyone here in this conversation knows what these videos are. For those of you who don't know, BFunk released a series of tutorials in dance fundamentals. They did one series that was presumably on hip hop fundamentals, and it's a series of videos, each one meant to highlight a different technique, step, something like that. And they've got another series also covering fundamentals of Bhangra, similarly covering a bunch of different steps, fundamentals, some routines, and they've released these tutorials in tandem, and there is I believe it's a 14-day free trial, and then after that there is a subscription-based model, or you can pay for the whole class. But the point is that they release these videos behind a paywall, and they're supposed to be teaching fundamentals, which is a little bit different from what they've kind of been doing up till this point. They've released a lot of videos and have gotten incredibly popular through a lot of their shorter dance routines that have really taken off on both YouTube and Instagram. So these videos, as far as I've been able to tell, and from, Umar, let me know you guys also have seen a lot of their other Bhangra and BFunk stuff. These were like a little different from what they have been putting out.
Yeah, I would say, I came to this late, and I didn't see all of this, and I was responding to it. And my first takeaway when I hear about someone teaching is, you make that shift. It's a very intentional shift when you teach and you set up yourself as a teacher or like a guru, right? Or an ustad, which means, teacher in Punjabi. You are essentially saying you're almost like a master of your craft, or there's something that's given you the opportunity to teach. And I do think that's a major shift from a classroom setting, like a fun hybrid classroom setting where it's not trying to be something more than just the class itself. And now you have an instance where you're taking kind of like an ownership or leadership of that. So I always find it interesting when people do that, because it's, I've seen a lot of dance academies that teach, classical dance, like Bharatanatyam, which is, Indian classical dance, or, Bhangra, and almost always it's built off the back of some level of success, whether it's success at a dance competition, or it's success with graduating a certain number of students, or it's success at, art festivals or major performances. And so this does feel to me very different. And I am candidly pretty surprised at the shift, because a lot of this education is also it's not, I would say, done freely, but it's a little bit more readily available than people realize, right, to get that kind of head start. So I don't know about you, Omar. What were your thoughts?
Honestly, when this first all started happening, a friend of mine showed me Castro stuff, and at first I was like, "Wait, what dance form is he talking about?" I'm not really sure. Then my friend filled me in. I was like, no, like they released a hip hop tutorial, and I guess when I was first hearing all this stuff and basically like not hearing a reply from BFunk and all of them, kind of just honestly, and I think you alluded to this, Castro, is just kind of made me sad. In all honesty.
Yeah.
I wanted to just quickly go back to something Ron was saying earlier, which maybe we can all talk about. Ron brought up this idea of like the authority to teach, right? And like deciding to, hold a space for dancers. One thing that BFunk's really been praised for a lot, which I think is pretty easy to get behind, is just holding a space for dancers, especially South Asian dancers, to just show up, have a community they can dance with, explore a whole bunch of different dance styles. But there's a difference that Ron was alluding to between holding space for dancers and then making yourself an authority that is qualified to teach others, right? So, Castor, one of the things that you mentioned was that when you saw the videos, you immediately said, okay, I don't know who these people are, right?
Yeah.
Can you talk about, like, who is allowed to teach? Who knows enough? And, like, do they only know enough if we think they know enough? Or do they only know enough if we know who they are? Or, like, how do we decide who has the authority to teach? How do we evaluate someone's knowledge, someone's skill, and someone's potential contribution to the community?
Well, that's a pretty loaded question. How do you know who's qualified to teach? I mean, you pretty much answered it, but at the same time, it's pretty open ended, right? So the way it works in the street dance community is you have to be a participant first and foremost. You can't just show up from another community and be like, I like this. I'm going to take this class. Oh, I can teach this. And then you don't know. There's what you have to understand is that it's about culture, right? The culture is built by the community. The community is filled up of the people who make up the culture. The styles exist because of the culture. So if you're not part of the culture, first and foremost, it's harder for you to get in a position to become a teacher. And you become a teacher essentially by not only participating, but growing in skill and then getting recognized with someone as skill, but then being respected by everyone when you speak. There's an issue in every community where people talk but they really don't understand. Um, and a lot of people listen to respond, they don't listen to understand. And the people who listen to respond end up in these positions of being teachers And you can tell that they're not really qualified because of not just what they talk about in class, but the results that show up in their students. So a good way to measure is this person highly skilled at the dance? Can this person talk about the dance and it makes sense? Can this person talk to the elders in the community, not as a teacher student level, but as a peer? I did a live stream on should you be teaching, and I asked a very specific question. I said, if you went into a classroom full of your peers because you're calling yourself an educator, right? It's not your friends, it's not the people in the scene, it's not the fans or the people who make montages of you on YouTube and think you're amazing. If you sat in a room full of other educators and you had to teach your class to them, would they tell you you know what you're talking about, or they tell you to be quiet? That's kind of the rule of thumb. Am I respected enough by other educators to teach? For me, I got into the position of teaching because people asked me to teach, and I made mistakes along the way because teaching is a learned skill. And unfortunately, in street dance, which doesn't exist at this moment, but there are things happening behind the scenes where this will become a thing, where there's no formal societal education for this, right? You can get a dance degree, but it's also in only in white classically trained dances. It's not in any brown dance.
That's really, really similar to what happens in a lot of South Asian dances. Like there are the more like classical canonized forms that Ram was alluding to earlier, like Kathak and Bharatanatyam. But then you also have Bhangra, which is like a folk dance, literally by definition. It is
But
not.
that's culture, and it should be protected as
Yeah,
culture, and people don't, right? So we have this issue in the black community where we get pissed off when somebody goes, "This is commercial hip hop." We go, "That doesn't exist because there's no commercial ballet, there's no commercial contemporary. Why do we have to have a commercial version of our thing to make it valuable? It doesn't make sense." And we know that that comes through white supremacy. We don't have to go down that rabbit hole, but these things are coming where society will have credited courses in street dance and they will be in legitimate education in middle school, high school, and university. This will effectively change the scope of art and provide jobs in the black and brown community all throughout the United States for us to survive on the stuff that built this country.
I just kind of want to go back to what you said earlier, because one thing I like, I wrote like basically my thoughts on a blog recently, and one thing as I was writing and thinking about all this stuff was I like I really wanted to get away from like when I was younger and I was learning Bhangra from like various different people, and there's a various different styles and approaches to doing Bhangra. There's no like quote unquote right way. There's no in the Bhangra circuit. It's like folk. Are you doing it folk?
Mm-hmm.
Is it proper? Is it like that? Is kind of the term that's used, and like one thing I was getting wanted to like not sound like or like the folks that would say like, nah man, that's the way you are doing it, you're doing it wrong, you're doing it incorrectly, and like, or quote unquote what they'd say, that's not folk enough, you're not like, and I was really, when I was looking and thinking about all the stuff around BFunk, I was really trying to say like, am I just being the asshole who is just like gatekeeping the dance, because it is a people's dance. It's like again, the term is like lok nach, a people's dance. And I think what you said right there was just like, but at the same time, like you can look at them and very objectively say like, man, like the form's not up to snuff. Like there are just like certain things like posture.
yeah, like their way of dancing, like to Castro's earlier point, like their way of dancing doesn't come from the community. They have decided their own way of doing it, which is that's their prerogative. And I think like yes, as Bhangra dancers, we hesitate to really jump in and say like, this is right, this is wrong. There's only one way to do Bhangra, but
actually, I would say like as Bhangra dancers, like generally the community is really, really, really loves to say that.
Yeah,
shit.
yeah, we're trying to be better, but
yeah,
but yeah, I think it is an interesting point. Like, does your dancing and does your education and does your knowledge come from the community that you're trying to teach the dance style of?
One of the things I struggle with in Castro, I'd love to bounce this off of you, right? Is I know in this like very social media driven age of like very small attention spans and getting out in front of the camera, there's this commoditization of a lot of dance forms, right? And to me, I think that's okay. I mean, it's the culture, I guess, in some ways being influenced. Like I have my own reservations about this, but I think when you're doing a video and you're just dancing for fun, it feels a little different, right, than when you teach. And one of the things I wanted to get from you is, if you're gonna make it a career or make it a business to teach a dance, you mentioned something about respect from your peers, and I think that's a very valid and critical thing. Like I want to be able to walk into a room full of my peers in Bhangra dancing, and then they should be like, okay, like Rob, this makes total sense, right? Like you should be able to teach. But from your perspective, like what are some of the like hallmarks of a teacher that you would want to see going into a class, like a dance class that you were being taught, that tells you that that person has like the authority figure to teach that class?
Okay, so I literally just had this conversation today on an app called the Airtime app. This is what I tell my students. Because for my perspective, right, it's about style. I'm a style based dancer in a style based community. Um, so the information is based on style. And for popping specifically, I say 5, 6, 7, 8 is not going to teach you popping. When you walk into choreo spaces, you're not even using your own brain outside of following the directions of somebody who did all the work for you. You're using their brain. So are you really learning how to dance, or are you learning how to follow? And popping 5, 6, 7, 8 only teaches you how to follow. It doesn't teach you how to actually do the dance and understand the science of how the dance works. So I would see these all levels classes, and the teacher would go 5, 6, 7, 8, and I could see that there were dancers who um, were extremely competent, have a high level of dance IQ, and then you have dancers who don't, you couldn't find their nose if it wasn't on their face, and you're kind of like, okay, well, how do I split up this class and get them all to understand um, what they need to understand? So, like for me, I would need an environment where the teacher is very specific on each group of dancers. Then I would address each group while the music is playing. I said, this is what you're going to do. I said, if you are advanced already, I need you to start getting down, wait for me to come. You don't need my help right now. You need to get warm because I'm going to give you a task. And I can leave them alone for the majority of class and then come check on them because their brains already understand the dance to a certain level where I don't have to give them my undivided attention. Then I can spend the rest of that class walking to each group and spending time educating and making sure they're not making mistakes. Because when you're just teaching choreography, you're looking in the mirror, you can't see everyone. People just start to blend together, and there's no difference or separation in the overall level of the class. You're pretty much saying, hey, everybody's the same, and they're not. Your students are essentially seeds, and you have to give them actual nourishment for them to grow. You can't just feed them all fertilizer and say, here, when they're all different plants, they don't take the same food.
Well, there's a thing that Cash was talking about that I think is very much lost in a lot of when you start commercializing and teaching it, right? Which is, what is the essence of the dance, right? Like, because Castro, correct me if I'm wrong, but when I hear you talking about it, it's kind of like more of a celebratory feel. Like popping and street dance does not come out of, right, like a stage performance. It's kind of like the house parties or the vibes where you're dancing and you're kind of on the same wavelength, right? And it just becomes like an expression of art, which is in a lot of ways is like sometimes people lose the root of Bhangra too, right? We have the dance circuit, we have a dance community, but it is a celebration of like a successful harvest. That's what Bhangra was. It was the dance you did after like you just got in a bunch of grain, and that's fantastic. And you want to have a party about it, and in a lot of ways people lose sight of like the movements that come out of celebrating.
Yeah, it's
right?
primarily a social dance at its root, despite the fact that we have really, really drilled down on the making it competitive, making it formalized, having these like teams, these routines that are a set length of time, this music that has to be a certain way. Like it is at its root a community dance that was a informal expression of joy, like in its beginning.
That's exactly what street dance was. The people who started our dances were children in the hood. They weren't allowed to play sports in the 60s. You know, a lot of times with white kids, integration was still very, very, very new. And so what you find is that just like our ancestors, indigenous, we dance to celebrate. Street dance is indigenous to the United States. It's not an African thing. It's not a, uh, uh, any South American thing. It is black. Black is not African. Black is a specific term for the United States. These are our cultural indigenous dances that just so happen to become monetized and popular and consumed by the society that lives in this country and the people who run this country. Brown cultures and colored cultures in general, even Asian cultures, whether it's South Asian or East Asian, have become consumables for the United States in one way or another. But our culture is the only culture where our traditional dances are consumed on the regular all the time by everyone for every purpose.
I want to go back to BFunk itself and some of the original material that was in the video that you made, Castro. I First of all, everyone should watch it because I don't want anyone to misinterpret anything we say in this like paraphrased conversation from what you said in your original video. So everyone should go ahead and watch that and get your original points there. But I was wondering if you could just articulate for us a little bit about why, like specifically, what is culturally appropriative about B-Funk making those videos
Okay.
and the way they did it.
So, very simply, what Tanish shared with me was that he was asked to do a private for one of the ladies that runs B-Funk. And he was like,
Just to define what is a private.
He was asked to do like a one-on-one class. I guess he's a popular dude. He's got crap ton of followers, right? And so with great power comes great responsibility and great popularity all at the same time. She asked him to teach her something, and what I found out through him was that they were sponsoring his visa to the United States. So it's kind of like whatever they ask him to do, he's going to do because they're the reason why he's in the country. So he's kind of like in this position where it wasn't that way until this happened. Everything was hunky dory. So he goes and he teaches her whatever she's asking for. He's like, hey, like I'm not. He literally told me like I don't know like everything about these things, but I'll give you what I know. Which is not. It's not necessarily a bad thing because that's how we all start, right? So I can't even be mad at that. We all start as educators in that space. And one of the ladies, whoever he was teaching, she goes, oh, well, you should do tutorials. We can just set this up. And he literally says, I'd rather do choreography. Like, I don't feel right doing this, but, I can give you choreo. I have all these pieces and stuff like it. And they're like, no, it'll work because, and so here's the thing, South Asian people want to see a South Asian person. So that was their thing to him. And his thing was like, okay, well, I'm kind of broke. This doesn't feel right, but I need money and blah, blah, blah. So what I found out is he was not getting paid consistently on every subscription. He got a flat rate. And then everything that came in after that went straight to them. He didn't see a dime of it. So he got paid for his work making the videos. And, my conversation with him, he was extremely apologetic. He was just mad at himself. And like, you can see somebody and they know like they don't have an out, but they're also like genuine. Like when I got on the phone with him and I looked at his face, he knew. He was like, bro, you don't have to say anything. Like, I already know I fucked up. And I was like, okay, well, as long as we're on the same page, now let's talk about it. And you got to understand this is what you got to do to rectify it. But his position was like, I got to do what I got to do for them because they're the only way I can come back to the States. This is the only way I can be successful in my, so he was a young kid who made a mistake, who was really just trying to, and he's owned up to his mistake. And the street dance community doesn't have any issue with him now. Like nobody's mad at him. Everybody gets it. You live and you learn, right? Sometimes you speak out of turn. I did it once. I taught a house class when I was younger because a choreo team by where I was living asked me to do it, and I was like, "Well, I'm not a house dance teacher. Like I know some things." They're like, "No, it's okay." And then years later down the line, Brian Green looked me dead in my eye and was like, "I heard you taught a house class." I just put my head down and I was like, "Yeah, I fucked up," and I couldn't get away from it. But I've never done it since then. I've only been teaching popping because that is my bread and butter, you know, and I'm qualified by the people who literally started the dances. So it's not like I'm not within my right to do it. So his thing was like, oh, well, you know, I wanna fix this. And I said, the only way to fix this is to refilm all of those things. They're probably not gonna pay you again, but you're gonna have to go back there. They can refilm all this, and you can be in the video, but you got to be an assistant to whoever's actually qualified to teach.
So I have, if I were to follow this like to its extreme logical conclusion, I think the question ends up being, are only black and brown people qualified to teach hip hop?
No,
Okay, so break down for us who is qualified to teach hip hop and how you can do it in a way that's not culturally appropriative if you're not black or brown.
you have to put in the work and be recognized by the people from the community that are in the highest positions for them to say, yeah, you should be teaching. When I got back to New York City, I had already been teaching for about 5 or 6 years, 7 years maybe. And Buddha Stretch, the guy who started freestyle stand up hip hop, Stretch was like, you're the only one that should be teaching here. Now, mind you, you got all these famous, well known name dancers from Asia and all these other places teaching, but it's kind of like, think about it like martial arts, right? I've been doing martial arts since I was 4, but I've never put myself in a position to be an educator in martial arts. So I'm not qualified to teach because I didn't go out of my way to try to help or instruct people in martial arts, right? When you decide to be an educator, you're essentially taking on the responsibility of pushing the culture forward. If the people in the culture who are already doing that don't respect, again, the things that come out of your mouth, right? So you don't have to be black or brown. You just have to have, it's going to be harder if you're not to get a really good grasp and understanding to do it right, right? But um, you can be good at the dance. That doesn't mean you understand the dance in a space where you can make other people's brains understand the dance. That's a different skill altogether, right? You got to go to school to get a degree to be a teacher. So, how long have you been in this school of hard knocks, essentially, in the street dance community where you understand it to a level where, again, your peers and the people around you respect what comes out of your mouth? Are they willing to follow you? Are they willing to listen to you? Does that mean you're just charismatic and you're good with your words, or you're actually intelligent? And so that's the gray area, but you don't have to be black or brown. You just need to be good enough, essentially. You have to be competent to demonstrate, and what the things you have to say have to make sense. So usually people who judge contests are also teachers because you essentially have to be the smartest person in the room in both those spaces.
It's actually like really interesting because this is like, I mean, the Bhangra community, especially in the United States, it's like it's really really young. Like the competitive circuit only really started in 2008, but even then, like the growth of the circuit from like 2008 to 2012 and 2012 to 2016 is absurd. And one conversation that comes up a lot, especially back, so there's like this thing called BTF, and it's like a forum that everybody like hopped on all the time. It's like, can a non-Punjabi teach Bhangra? Because you know it's Punjabi dance, and so like I think nowadays I think it's kind of understood you don't have to, and I think I like the way you said if you're respected amongst your peers, if you can talk and you can teach other teachers, like you're probably like good enough to teach. I think that was succinctly a definition I had been looking for a very long time on like how does one say like okay you can teach, and you see like I mean Ram taught me he is not Punjabi, and Sid taught me he's not Punjabi, and like you now kind of see plenty of non-Punjabis running, like being able to like hold the respect of other people who are from the like quote unquote like originators and progenitors of the culture.
You really have to have a deep seated relationship and love and understanding for the culture to have a strong connection to the dance. Like, so I had an issue with some kids from China. I was at an event in like January 2020, and I'm in New York, and I overhear some kids that have come to some sessions and been to some contests, and every time they would not win or make it to the finals, they would just leave. Their whole group would leave. And I heard them talking about, oh, we're going to throw this contest and blah, 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 but we're just going to invite our peoples and blah, blah. I said, why would you do that? They didn't think I was listening. I was like, why would you do that? And the kid was like, well, I'm Chinese and we don't have a lot of Chinese people here that pop. And so we don't want to get influenced by you guys. We just want to be with our own people. And I said, let me ask you a question. Now, again, I've been doing martial arts since I was 4 years old, right? So one of my favorite things from Kung Fu is the lion dance. It's one of the most beautiful expressions of art and dance in Chinese culture, but it's specifically in martial arts culture. It doesn't exist outside of that, right? So I said, what if I started teaching lion dance classes, had lion dance sessions, and then had a lion dance competition? But I didn't invite anybody from the actual culture. And then when you ask me, why would I do that? I would tell you, I don't want to be influenced by you. And the kid's eyes were just like, I was like, do you see how that sounds? Does that make sense to you? He was like, no. And I was like, we're not trying to influence you. We're trying to give you everything we have so you can be better. This is why there's so much separation and the definitions are messed up and there's so much cultural appropriation because people don't respect because they don't actually care or love the thing they say they love. It's just fast food for them.
Right.
It's instant gratification. It makes me feel good, but I actually don't care about this thing to the level I should because if I did, I wouldn't be disrespecting the people who could literally give me everything I need to be the best in this actual thing.
Yeah, you're raising a really interesting point that I think, like, again, a lot of Bhangra dancers have danced around, no pun intended, which regards to, like, the difference between, like, gatekeeping and sharing and expanding the culture, right? Like, we do want more people to participate in everything that we're doing, as I'm sure is how you feel, Castro, about, you know, the dances. It's like we want to be able to share it with as many people as possible. In our case, like, it doesn't have to be Punjabi people. It doesn't have to be South Asian dancers. We want as many people to participate it and love it the way that the rest of the dancers love it. At the same time, there is that impulse that a lot of us have to, like, okay, but we want it to be done quote unquote right? And so there's that constant balance between, like, are we gatekeeping or are we trying to are we doing that at the expense of sharing a culture with people that, like, we could be bringing into this more.
I mean, there's a fine line in a gray area, and it really depends on that fine line and gray area is either crossed or lived in by the individual that is not from the culture. Rice Ball, who's a world champion hip hop dancer, who's damn near Buddha Stretch's son almost, right? Has been with him since, and he was almost like 10 years old, 11 years old. And what Rice Ball told me is he didn't even care about dance when he was a kid. His sister was the dancer. She was going to like a locking class. He was like, I don't want to do this, but his parents made him go, and he fell in love with it. And now he's one of the best hip hop dancers on the planet, and he does it. He's one of the only people outside of the United States that actually does it right. He's not black at all, full on Japanese. I remember being on the train with him and a bunch of other Japanese kids, and they got off the train, and I had all these black people on the train looking at me like, why are you letting them act black? And I said, what do you mean act black? Well, they're trying to act like they dance and they do. I said, where are your kids? Are your kids in hip hop class? They didn't have an answer, and I was like, oh, because he's in hip hop class and he's learning from black folks and he's protecting black folks in his country. Like, what are you doing here? And you know what I'm saying? People, and that's another thing, like the entitlement. You also got to be aware of that because if you're not actually doing your part to respect and uphold the things from your own culture, you don't have a voice either. You don't just get a pass because you're black or brown, for whatever your culture is. It doesn't work that way. It's called responsibility and accountability. And Rice Ball takes responsibility and accountability for himself and for hip hop as a Japanese man in Japan. Nobody has an issue with him.
What's fascinating is there was this guy that we did a podcast interview with. He's a professor. He's a white dude who went to India and he studied the dole, which is the instrument that is played for Bhangra. And he studied that for like 20, 30 years and he wrote a book about it, right? But he literally went to India and he lived in those communities. And his thing was like, it's about, like, to your earlier point, Kasha, which was like the foundation of dance and how it like accompanies the music that is around the times and the stuff that's being sung about. That's kind of what happened, right? Like he was like, different dances are done to different beats, different dole beats, and that became the foundation for like modern stage dancing, right? And I look at it and I think about like it's like those kinds of stories and those kinds of historical perspectives, whether you agree with them or not, you should at least go out and try to learn about the choices that were made. And if you're gonna make a choice, understand, like, even if it's a choice to conform or if it's a choice to be different, it's at least a little bit more of an intentional and informed choice. It's not something in a vacuum, right? It's like you need to know that, like, you've come from someplace and you're gonna take this step, and you're gonna take the step for a reason, and this is the reason why you're gonna do it, right? But at least be able to say, like, hey, I know so and so did it this way, or I know so and so did this, or this has happened, and we're gonna do this, right? And this is the reason why. And I feel very strongly that people don't take the time to at least explain why they made the choice to teach the class the way they taught it, or at least give some background into those kinds of decision making, right? And to me, when it comes to, like, actually teaching a class, you should be able to recap and say, like, hey, this is the reason why I did the thing that I did, right?
And that becomes a thing for us, like, on the Bhangra circuit, like, not even just in classes, because, again, like, a lot of us experience dance in purely, like, the competitive scene, right? Like, we join teams that are competitive, we go to competitions, that's where we hone our craft, that's where we get our feedback, all of that. And so, Ram, a lot of what you're talking about are the same conversations that, like, we're having as, you know, captains and judges as well after competitions. And, you know, when you're sitting across the table from a captain who's like, hey, why didn't we do better, right? You will often see judges give feedback along the lines of, like, well, you had a segment that was, I think a classic example that I know, like, Gondol uses all the time is, you know, you were doing Mirza to a Damal beat. And if you don't know that those two things don't go together, someone who is more informed, someone who is more in touch with traditions, and someone who does, you know, make decisions about set design from a place of intentionality, like Ram was just talking about, they will know that you don't know your stuff. They will know that you didn't make a decision consciously. You made a decision that was not rooted in any sort of background knowledge about where this dance comes from. And so, like, it is 100% true in classes, but then I know that, like, just saying, like, for our scene, like, it's a thing that we come up against all the time when we're competing and trying to come up with really coherent, cohesive Bhangra sets and pieces of choreography.
There's a really funny anecdote, actually, to this, because I've danced for a really long time, so I have these really funny anecdotes about songs you should dance to and songs you shouldn't, which I think also ties into the cultural thing. So there was this song way back when, and no one danced to it. And the reason no one danced to it is because this song, it was called Amplifier. This song was essentially comparing a woman to a car and using kind of like the terminology translated into, like, driving a car and being with women, right? And if you were not Punjabi and you didn't understand the word, if you didn't understand, I think, the context around it, you just weren't going to dance to this song for a while. And the song came out and people didn't dance to the song because they didn't think you could dance to the song. And a lot of it also had to do with the fact that, like, I'm not Punjabi, and, like, a lot of the people on the team were not Punjabi, and so we're not going around, we're not listening to this song, right? Because this is not something we recreationally listen to. And then a team went out and did it, and this team was a Punjabi team, and I asked someone why, and it's because in the Punjabi culture, which is the foundation of the dance, this song was being played at, like, all the weddings, and everyone was having a great time, and everyone was dancing to it. And they were like, we're going to dance to it because this is, like, it's culturally relevant in that moment, in that community. And it's actually interesting because I remember there would be parties, that we'd have house parties when we were, like, the dancing house parties. And we would play Punjabi Bhangra music, even though none of us could really understand it. We would, like, try to find the newest music and we'd play it. And people were like, why do you want to keep playing it? I'm like, because this is the stuff that people who are doing the dance and at the forefront of the innovation around the dance, this is what they're listening to. And ultimately, if you want to get close to that, you got to listen to it and you got to try to understand the stuff that they're going through and the mindset of it, so you understand, like, how to actually innovate. And that was a really interesting thing because we listened to a bunch of music that we barely understood, but it was your in. Closer.
It was your in.
It was to get closer to understanding the mindset for how people were approaching the dance.
Word. Yeah, we have a song like that called Joystick. I don't remember if it's by the Daz Band or by the Barcades, but essentially, this guy is telling this girl that he will be her sex toy, and there's all this terminology in the song that alludes to the type of sex toy he is, and it's hilarious if you sit and listen to the lyrics. but it's a pretty vulgar song if you understand everything. But at the same time, it's a bopping track because it's funk music. And if you don't listen to the lyrics, the song is fire because the music production is literally amazing. Like you can't tell unless you sit there and understand all these vocabulary words that they're using. That is essentially one of our party tracks. And it's funny you say songs you do and don't dance to because we have that issue in the competition situation that people think that everything is funk belongs in a contest. No, you can play it in the contest space, but everything has its place. There's songs that you only play in the cipher. There's songs you play when the jam first starts just to have a setting or mood for the people walking in the building. There's songs that you should only play during the prelims, and then there's songs that belong in battles. Everything else doesn't belong there.
Can we talk about terminology quickly? Because you brought it up with like you just defined for us really nicely like what the word black means and what it doesn't mean.
Yeah.
Can we talk about the word hip hop and what it means and what it doesn't mean? I think it would be really useful for two reasons. One of which is Bhangra dance and music gets like borrows from hip hop music a lot. I think like that's something that is not unique to Bhangra, like you just said, like everyone does that. But we interact with that culture a lot, especially musically. And one of the things that was really interesting in some of the conversations that actually we've had before this one right here is you broke down I know some of my own misconceptions about like what is or isn't hip hop. So can you like try to define for us what is hip hop when it comes to like what is hip hop music and what is hip hop dance? And are there firm lines around those things? Are they not? Like what do you talk about when you say those things?
Yes. So hip hop is essentially rhythm, rap, and poetry. R&P essentially. Rap is essentially poetry. Hip hop is the boom bap, the bounce, the rock, the skate, the roll. That's the dance part of it. The first hip hop dance was actually breaking. Breaking was done to the break